A lot. Brenda wanted me being part of the family, and I flat out refused, so it was time to see Nigel again. He'd gained my trust by this time and knew my biggest problem was Brenda. I was angry with Nigel for not turning up for the blood test like he promised he would, so when Brenda got me in the car to visit Nigel, I was not happy. I ignored him for 20 minutes, then we went for his smoke. You weren't there, I said. Where? He asked me. I told him about the blood test. I didn't know, he said, showing me his diary. He'd been told it was the week after. Brenda had lied to him, and to me. Nigel apologised a lot and told me he'd be talking to Brenda about her behaviour. He did, and Brenda never let up about what a bad therapist he was, and how he was a bad influence on me. This just got me more angry with her. She was a constant irritation to the point that in the end I told her, he's better to me than you'll ever be. That didn't go down well with her either. Seriously. Honesty hurts. During what was left of our session, I told Nigel, my mum's grave is near here. I want to see it. He said he'd try and get permission to take me off the premises. And was there anything else that he could do? Yes, I want Brenda to stop asking about what I tell you. She's not my mum. She has no right to know. Okay, I'll deal with it, Nigel told me, nodding. And he did. Brenda ignored me all the way home. She must have had a right bollocking. The week went well. I was still grounded. It was the holidays. I was grounded until I apologised. I remember that much. But whatever it was I'd done, I wasn't apologising for it. Louise knocked on our front door. Sorry, I can't come out. I told her. Why? What's up? She said. Dunno, but I can't come out until I apologise, she said. I said. Apologise then and come out. Sheesh, she said, rocking her head left and right. She had a ribbon in her hair. It was red. No chance, I said. But before you go, you got smoke, I did. She handed me two in a pack and left. Brenda came to the door. I explained it was Louise and I couldn't go out. I walked away, leaving Brenda holding the door open. Tracy, you can go out if you apologise, she asked me calmly, but loud enough for Louise to hear. Nope, I said, picking my book up and heading for the conservatory. She set the ironing board up in the adjoining dining room, so I closed the door. I wanted to be on my own. She opened it. You've been in all day, why don't you go out in the garden? She asked. Oh, I knew this game. Wenzel used to play it. If I got up, I'd be told to go out. If I apologised. If I didn't, I was in trouble. Either way, I was going to be screwed. I was dying to tell her I'd been in for 2 weeks straight, but thought better of it, and headed out the front door. Nigel Willwood was playing with a remote-controlled car on the road. I stood talking to him for the drive for 10 minutes, checking the curtains every now and then to make sure I wasn't being watched. Nigel's parents were religious, like Brenda and Jim, but as far as I knew, like me, Nigel had little faith. I lit my smoke and walked out of the drive behind Louise's hedge. These would kill you if Brenda doesn't first, Nigel told me, smiling. I laughed. Fuck Brenda and fuck death. I don't care, mate. I meant it wholeheartedly. I did not care about me. We chatted for 5 minutes when Nigel said, Big Jim. I crushed the ciggy into my hand and it stung like hell. Tracy, are you smoking? Big Jim asked me, leaning forwards and pushing his shoulders out. What? Hell no, I replied, facing him and turning back to Nigel. I'm sure I saw smoke. Nigel? Big Jim asked. Nigel said nothing. Okay, well, if you weren't smoking, you won't mind swearing on the Bible, will you? Big Jim said. I shot him off. What the hell? Look, this game was new. You put your hand on the Bible and repeat, I swear on the Bible, I've not been smoking, he continued. God will strike you down if you have. Nigel took 2 steps backwards and turned pale. Don't do it, man, he said. Okay, I replied, slapping my hand on the Bible. My left still contained the brewing blister and remains of a crushed smoke. I swear I have not been smoking, I said. In the name of God, Big Jim added. I swear in the name of God I've not been smoking, I repeated, leaving my hand on the Bible and meeting Big Jim's eyes. He was trying to fuck with me. 2 can play that game. Big Jim moved the Bible. Okay then, lads, carry on, he said, walking on. You crazy bastard, Nigel said. What? I asked, peeling the paper and tobacco from my hand. You swore on the Bible, he said, yeah? Yeah. Didn't even get to finish my smoke, I said, pulling my last one from the pack and lighting up. Shortly after, Nigel went home, and I went back to Brenda's. I didn't think for a second at therapy I'd get to see Mum's grave. I waited in the waiting room. It was summer. There was a rocking horse opposite me, and Nigel was 10 minutes late. A girl came out. She looked happy and healthy and normal with Nigel. She gave Nigel a high smile and asked if I was ready to see my mum's grave. Yeah, who's the girl? I asked. She's one of my guests, like you, he replied. I like that, but I hope she hadn't seen the things I'd seen. When we went into his room, the waterfall painting had been freshly added to. It was there with cliffs and trees, the enormous cascading waterfall. Again I was awestruck. It was beautiful. What do you think? Nigel asked me. I love it. It's great, but it's sad, I said. Why is it sad? He asked. She just wants to be clean, to wash away the pain, to stand natural like a tree, strong but clean. She can't, though. There's the mountains in the way. It doesn't make sense, does it? I asked. You make a good therapist one day, Nigel said. No, I'm joining the army, I replied as we headed out the door. We got to the cemetery. I tried to remember from my mum's funeral where it was, and was able to manage it. Nigel and I arrived to find the stone had other names on it. My granddad's, my nan's, my mum's, and one I didn't recognise, which later would turn out to be my uncle's child, a baby cousin I never knew. Nigel asked me what I felt, but I couldn't say. He left me alone for 5 minutes. My mum's surname was wrong. She didn't have my surname. She had my granddad's brother's surname, as her maiden name, which must have meant my parents weren't married. My dad was actually my granddad's brother. Looking back now, this makes little sense, but at the time, not knowing who my dad was, seeing the wrong surname on Mum's headstone, I believed my granddad's brother, who Mum had slept with, was my father. I was in a state of complete shock. Nigel asked me questions on the way back to session. I ignored him, until he asked if it was okay. Yes, I'm not angry with you. I want to see my notes, I added. I needed to know my name. He showed me my notes. My name was Tracy Daly. My father's surname. I was totally confused. Was my mum even my mum? Who am I? Under today's notes, Nigel had written, Tracy appeared morose at Mum's grave. I asked him what morose meant. Sad, he told me. I'm not sad. I don't need help. Nobody's help. I'm not stupid, I replied. I didn't even know who I was. I knew who would, though. Wenzel. Chapter 31. I was reading in the conservatory on account of my grounded status. You can't read all day, you know. Play a game or put the computer on, Brenda told me, poking her head through the double-glazed doorway. Okay, I replied, totally intent on doing my own thing. Until, and I don't know why that moment, or where the idea came from. Maybe I'd just had enough, but the inspiration was instant. Can I get a game from upstairs? I asked her. Of course you can, she replied, knowing all the games were two-player. I'd have to get someone to play with and make an effort to be part of the family. I had no interest in the games, but off I went up the stairs and into her bedroom. I rooted through the drawer until I found a letter we'd received from Wenzel. I took one and left the rest as they were before I came downstairs. Nothing you wanted? Brenda asked me. No, it's okay. I'll put the computer on. I started wondering how long before I was caught, and kicked myself for forgetting the game. I turned the Mega Drive console on and waited until Brenda was taking the washing machine upstairs before taking the washing machine upstairs. Yeah, I ain't even going to correct that. That's epic. As stutters go, I've gone through this entire book without stuttering really once, apart from when it was warranted. That's absolutely perfect. And a part of me, as somebody who used to run warehouses, specifically furniture, electrical, would have loved to have seen this woman at that time try and carry a full washing machine up and downstairs. That would have been hilarious, bless her. Okay, I'm totally going to start this again. Some of this stuff's difficult to go over. This part actually isn't, but I'm surprised my stutter hasn't remanifested in that time. So let's continue as best I can. And I apologise for the minor interruption. Finally, I stuttered, wondering how long before I was caught, and kicked myself for forgetting the game. I turned the Mega Drive console on and waited until Brenda was taking the washing upstairs before I checked the letter. Finally, I had an address in Chester. I'd never known the address. We weren't allowed to know. Just as our letters all had to be checked by Brenda and Jim and redone if they said anything that could make them look bad. 20 minutes must have passed, and it was nearly 2:30. My paper round didn't start until 3:30, and although grounded, it was considered my job, so I had to do it. You can't sit on the computer all day, you know. Why don't you play in the garden? She now insisted. I knew she would. She always did. When I'd asked for a game, I'd done it in earshot of the living room around her family. where she would be as good as gold. But as soon as their backs were turned, she would make life as hard as she could for me. And besides, I was still grounded. I'm grounded? I asked her, trying to figure out what was happening now. No, you're ungrounded as of yesterday, she told me. I snapped. I can't read, I can't play on the game, I can't go out, I can't stay in. What can I do? I replied, looking at her questioningly. He's off again, I heard little Jim pipe up from the kitchen. Go outside and play, Brenda told me. I left the Mega Drive turned on, grabbed my book, and walked out. I sat on the back doorstep reading. No more than 5 minutes had passed, and she was out. What are you doing there? She asked. I just looked at her. She should know by now if you ask me a stupid question, you'll get a stupid answer. Several seconds passed before I informed her. Reading? And sighed. I felt the letter move slightly in my pocket. Go and play, she said, taking my book. Fuming, I stormed off. Where are you going? She shouted. Paper round, I yelled back, carrying my bike and bag from the garage. Oh no, you're not, it's too early, she screeched, walking purposefully towards me. Yes, I am, I said, throwing my leg over the bike and pedalling away. Bitch, 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 I repeated over and over as I threw my legs into a steady rhythm. Big Jim was home. He'd probably follow me in the car. I looked back to see no sign of him. Then he'd say something dumb. Then we'd argue, and I'd go back. Unless I wasn't where he expected me to be. What are your choices? I asked myself, like my scout leader had taught me. Cap, Keel, Louise, Stoppy, Nigel, Paula. No, she knew all them, and couldn't drag Paula into this. Where do you want to be? I asked myself, skidding to a stop at the bottom of the hill. With my family. I remember Nigel telling me to do what I want to do, because it's my life. Should have the choice. Okay, he wasn't referring to Wenzel, but it was my life. And it was my choice. I opened the letter and the address burnt into the back of my mind. How do I find Chester? How would you find it in Scouts? I cycled towards the bigger roads until I saw a sign saying Chester, 24 miles. I had no idea how long that would take, or how far a mile was, so we always hiked in kilometres. I could do 4 kilometres an hour with a full rucksack on in hiking boots. How long would it take on a bike with no rucksack? You won't know until you start going, I thought. I was sweating a lot and had to regulate my breathing like on a hike. The summer sun didn't help the sweating much either. What do I need? I asked myself. I had nothing. Just my t-shirt, trousers, my letter and my bag and my bike. I had no penknife, map or first aid kit. This was dumb. No, don't think like that. Remember the pyramid in Scouts. A fire needs fuel, air and a light source. A man needs his skills, food and water. With skills you can get food and water. What don't I need? I asked myself. Well, you don't need that luminous orange fucking bag for a start. I chucked the bag in the forest and immediately felt bad. My scout leader would have a fit as I dirtied the forest, even though it was a perfect observation sign and kept blowing out behind me. I had no choice. I couldn't do anything about the bike, so I turned my t-shirt inside out and put it back on, then carried on to a big roundabout. I asked the dog walker for directions and was pointing towards Chester. How would I remember the way back? Are you going back? What happens if you can't find it? Shut up, I insisted of myself. Finally pulled in at Chester beside the zoo. Still not had a drink, was now searching for Hoole in Chester. Thankfully the 4th person I stopped knew the location and it wasn't far. My attention must have lapsed, as 1 minute I was riding on the pavement, and the next a car was right next to me. I swerved and went into a wall. I was fine, however my front wheel was buckled. Couldn't even push it without it grating. I spent ages to try and figure out where Hull started and where it finished. By now I was cooling down and so was the evening air. I asked more and more people for this address until one guy said, "You having a laugh, mate?" stormed off. I looked at the building he'd come out of to find not only was I stood on the right road, but I was right outside the right address. Let's do this. Chapter 32. It looked like a large house from the outside and had no features. Suggested it was a halfway house for criminals. I don't know what I expected, maybe something that looked like a prison perhaps. Whatever I expected, this wasn't it. I looked at the door at the end of the path. It was blue, then I looked at the series of windows on the left. Would he be in? Would he be happy, sad? Would he be the same dad I knew before? I was certain he'd have changed for the better. In my head he'd hug me, tell me he missed me. Everything'll be alright, I'm sorry, let me explain everything. That's what he'd say, and it'd be alright. I'd understand whatever it was he told me, and we'd get the family back. I was certain that he'd changed into a version of Alan. After prison, he'd have had to see the light, change his ways, it would be perfect. Did I really want to do this, knowing what he was like before?